Hi everyone. Hello, hello. So today's episode is gonna be about society and gender. And I don't want to get balled up too much, in the idea of like, is gender a social construct? Is it not? Love to talk about that. But I think a more interesting analysis is not just how gender plays a role in today's society, but what role has it played historically? Let's talk about it. So, I'm very excited about today's episode because I had some time to do research, and anytime I research, I nerd out about it. So, let's start by obviously defining our terms. Also, if at any time anyone wants to make a comment, jump in, call up, and I'll put you on. So, when we talk about gender, it basically talks about a range of characteristics pertaining to both femininity and masculinity. And depending on the context, for example, if we're talking from a biological lens, I am a OBGYN or I am a family physician, the way I'm going to think about gender is going to be much different than if I am a sociologist or a psychologist. It is true, most cultures use gender in a binary sense, which means that gender is divided into two categories, right? Boys, men, girls, women. These two categories are the ones that exist. And anything that falls outside these groups, kind of, people talk about it as like non-binary, meaning it doesn't sit inside these two binary distinction. Some societies have genders besides man and woman, such as the Hijars of South Asia. These are often referred to as third gender societies and some fourth gender societies. Most scholars agree that the central characteristic for gender is one under the category of social organization. So, a good way to understand what I am talking about when I say gender, and I think most modern intellectuals do, is we can use the analogy of colors. So, I'll give you a story. I think it was a while back. I was hanging out with my brother and a few friends, and we're looking at I don't remember what it was. I think it was colors on the computer screen, trying to categorize and what's it called? Trying to get the computer screen to actually represent the colors that we see. And I was like, well, this is good. This is blue. And my brother turns to me and he goes, no, that's periwinkle. I was like, periwinkle? Is that even a color? He's like, yeah. I'm like, isn't it blue? He's like, well, it is blue, but it's not really blue. Like when we talk about blue, we think of the ocean, we think of the sky, and periwinkle doesn't really fall there. And I kind of had a aha moment. That aha moment basically made me realize that sure, the colors that we experience, the colors that we see, have a real world basis to them. They exist in virtue of our sensations, our optical lenses, our eyes, and physics and the wavelength of the world. But yet, when we divide them up, when we put lines to them, me deciding that blue simply ends between this wavelength and with this wavelength is generally decided. It's constructed. I can divide blue into two colors. One of the things you can look at anecdotally in my life is that growing up in Israel, we always made a distinction between brown, maroon, Bordeaux, and purple. But in the States, I really only found this distinction between brown and purple. Many people will call maroon brown, and many people will call Bordeaux purple, or they would even say scarlet red. And for me, these were always distinct categories. Being a young kid, we would have these charts. We would have brown, Bordeaux, Mar- and then I'm roboting a bit. Okay, give me 1 second. Is this better? Can anyone let me know in the chat if I am still roboting? Way better. Excellent. So this distinction made sense to me. And I think we can think of gender in a very similar way. So historically, the word gender hasn't really been used. When you look at letters, dictionaries, the only time it's used is when they're talking about language, specifically like language gendering. Many languages like Spanish, Hebrew, I think Italian does this too, makes a distinction in gender with language. And when it came to humans, the word gender was interchangeable with the word sex. We really start seeing the word gender used with a psychologist and sexologist named William Mooney or Money. I don't remember how it's pronounced. And he kind of started looking at gender not as simple as the biology of the person, but also the expectations and the way uh, gender looked. So he did a lot of studies with hermaphrodite, and he found characteristics that define sex and don't necessarily mean as what we think of a male or female. For example, it'd be like external genital morphology, internal reproductive structures, hormonal and secondary sex characteristics, nodal sex, chromosomal sex. We know that many people who have XX chromosomes can pass as masculine, and people who have XY can be very small and feminine. And what this kind of showed that thinking about sex and gender in particularly as dichotomous, as a binary, either this or the other, was in a way ignoring reality. The idea is that gender in society is actually bimodal, that there is a masculine side and a feminine side, but most don't fall either to the left extreme or the right extreme, either masculine or feminine, but rather fall inside somewhere. It is true that the distribution is on the extremes, right? Most people would be either masculine or feminine, but it tapers down. Think about it almost like an inverse bell curve, where instead of the peak being in the middle, the peak is to the left and to the right, and it trickles down towards the middle, almost like a big smiley face. So, the concept of gender in a modern sense, is a recent invention in human history. The ancient world had no basis for this understanding of gender as it has been understood in the humanities and the social sciences in the past few decades. An interesting anecdote is Franklin D. Roosevelt. So he actually grew up wearing a pink dress because pink was the color of fortitude and wealth, as blue was feminine and soft. The most influential concept of gender has been sociologist R.W. Cornell's idea of what he calls, I think it's a she, I don't remember, a hegemonic masculinity. Now, these terms have a lot of baggage with them, right? People hear the word hegemony and masculinity, and the first thing that pops into your head most of the time are short snippets from SJW owned compilations on YouTube. But let's try to really contend with what we're talking about. Hegemonic masculinity, as defined by Cornell, is the configuration of gender practice which embodies the currently accepted answer to this problem: the legitimacy of who's in power, who has the right of being in power. The dominant position, that of men, and the subordinate one of women. We know that in modern society, these lines are much more blurred, but historically, through society, it's been very much the case that men are in charge. Women tend to have to be in the home. And these masculinities weren't based in anything objective in a way. And when I mean objective, I mean anything that we can measure biologically. All we could point to is either history, this is how it's been done, women have had this role, society is functioning, therefore that's the role of women. Rather than look at female biology, look at what females can do, look at the thing that females have and how they can contribute. And in many ways, we know that today females can do many of the things that men can, whether it's being scientists, athletes, whatever it might be. So one of the questions that I think would be good for people to talk about would be, how has the expectation of your gender affected your course in society? For example, for me, a big thing that defined me was this idea of having to be independent. I grew up in a society where men were expected to be independent. And to be a man mean that I needed to be able to stand on my own 2 feet before I pursued a woman, before I built a family. And that has been something very difficult for me, asking for help, etc., etc. So, does anyone want to call in and kind of start talking about that answer? How has your expectations from society has played a role on you? Let's hear from Johnny. Hey Johnny, you're
Hello,
up.
hello, Dandan, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. How has the idea of being a man, right, masculinity, played a role in my
Mhm.
idea about society? I got to tell you, yeah, I'm kind of like you, right? In that, yeah, I feel like being a man is taking care of yourself and being able to take care of the family that you take on, right? That having the responsibility to take care of them, their physical needs, their emotional needs, right? And not asking anybody, right, for help. But of course, as you know, I take everything under the context of neoliberalism and the neoliberal era. I actually was growing up, and at 16, when I first started to think really hard about, what is it to be a man. That was like at the very beginning of the neoliberal era, and at that time, uh, a guy could be 24 years old, go out and buy a house, and support his
Mhm.
family, and I felt at that time I felt pretty confident about that. I felt like, yeah, I can do this, right, and I've done it up to this day, right. Uh, but I think over time that has changed. I mean, look at men today under the neoliberal era and how they feel about how it is that, for the most part, they can't really take care of their family. They can't go out and buy a house. They can't, that sort of thing, and how that must play in his mind.
Mhm.
Because I mean, it's not true to everybody. Of course, not everybody is living, under $60,000 a year. But when you have houses, the prices of houses so high right now. how must that play in a man's mind, and that's just what I was going to say is regular. Don't forget that, that's a bad word, but that's just like a white middle-aged, a white male in today's society. Think about how the black man and the Mexican feels, the Asian, the minority, which is, less, has less opportunity in my mind, So it's devastating, I think, for the for the psyche, you know. Uh, that's just the way I think about it. I just what do you think? You think I'm on? Am
I
I?
think you are definitely hitting on something that matters and
Mm-hmm,
is 10 trillion% true. We live
mm-hmm,
in a society where many of the roles that we expect men to have, uh, regardless of their underpinning, are ones that are very difficult to actualize, like owning a house, having property. Give me one sec.
sure.
Sorry about that. Um,
Mm-hmm,
that are very hard to fulfill, and they definitely might play an issue with mental health. And when you talk about disenfranchised group like minority groups, it's definitely true that the concept of masculinity in those groups might even be related to what Travis likes to call machismo, or in many respects, people say toxic masculinity. Him and I have debated on the topic, but I think when men can't fulfill specific roles, we tend to jump to that which we can do, being crass, being violent, being apathetic, being dominating, because these are some of the roles that we can do. So we take on these roles that are easy to accomplish, and these might also be toxic both to ourselves and our society.
mm-hmm. What do you think? What do you think about how the Native American man felt when women played a big role in their society? I've read, well, not really. To be honest, I haven't read. I've just heard of people talk about how women played such a vital role in the organization and society. Of course, back then, I guess you were a warrior, and I guess that's what being a man was in the Native American community, right? Uh, right? I mean, that makes sense,
Well,
right?
you're hitting on something actually, which I wanted to bring up halfway through the conversation.
Oh, okay. I'm jumping.
But that's
I'm always
perfect
jumping.
because
Go
that's
ahead.
perfect.
Uh,
So the Iroquois, or the Haudenosaunee as they called themselves, which just means the people of the Longhouse, were actually matriarchal societies. The
uh,
person at the head of the clan was known as the clan mother. Now,
mhm.
imagine Westerners coming, meeting these people, and they go, "Let me talk to your chief."
Wow.
They weren't
Yeah.
interested in speaking to the clan mother. They were
Uh,
talking to the chief. The chief had almost no political power as compared to the clan mothers or the den mothers or the Hodonoshonis. The way they built their society was in a longhouse. And that whole longhouse was managed by the decision of the clan mother. So they would talk to this chief, they would try to bargain with him, they would go back, and there would be this massive disconnect. And this
wow.
distinction between the expectations that man run the house, man
Right.
run the tribe, is one where two societies and their gender roles clashed in such a way that it entirely harmed their communication.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. I can't. It's hard to imagine, honestly. I guess I'm so westernized. I guess I've heard of that, but actually, I thought they played an important role in that society. But you're saying they were the chief. The woman was
They
actually
weren't
the
the
head of the
chief. The,
clan.
the the chief
Yeah,
would be
not the chief, but
like,
the head of the clan, right? Yeah,
yes, they were the
and
head of the clan. The
and
clan
made all
mother
the
was on
important
top.
decisions. That's hard for me to grasp. I guess that's
Hmm.
my masculinity coming out, right? Because in my mind,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, yeah, like you just said, right? Because in my mind, and what's funny is that you've heard that saying, I might be the head of the house, but my wife turns the head, right? Right? You heard of that, right?
Yes,
And
yes, I
and
have.
this and it's very true. It's very true with me. It's a partnership thing. But to even try and imagine what you just said about the clan mother and that type of society and how
Hmm.
Westerners came over and this disconnect, this idea, this kind of like, oh shit, what do you do with that?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
we've that's crazy. I
Well, we,
think
we we have similar sayings, right? Like happy
uh-huh,
wife, happy life, right?
right, yeah,
Right. So, in a
uh-huh,
sense, women do run the home, right? They run many different aspects of it. She wears the pants, as Carnal says, right? These genders exist in our society, and they have a
hmm,
very interesting way by which we interact with each other. And I think
hmm,
what we're seeing is that in society, because of technological advancements and because of social advancements, we're
hmm,
seeing a kind of clash between um, the traditional ways which have brought us to where we are and the
hmm,
fear of those underpinnings being dropped, society having losing that which made it, and the reconfiguration of it, I think, is really
yeah,
troubling a lot of people.
yeah, yeah. The was it Elizabeth Warren in her book The Two Income Trap?
Yes.
How in that book she says that the women went into the workplace and just put themselves in the trap. uh, there's a lot of women out there that feel like that they can and they can contribute to society, right? With their
Hmm.
finances, but I think that it sort of hurt our society more than it helped. You know what I mean? And that's not to say that they shouldn't go out and work, right? I'm not one of those that says, "Hey, you stay home and cook and be barefoot and make babies." I'm not. It's not that. It's just that it was that push towards getting into the workplace where, I think bad people took advantage to the point where, now the family's really stressed out, and that gosh, how about the idea of a woman making more money than men, right?
What about that
You
idea?
know, that's tough. You know, for me personally, that'd be pretty tough. It's that
Give
masculinity in
me.
me, that's good. That idea of control, that idea of it's me providing, not you know,
Hmm.
for me. But I'm Mexican. Maybe it's my heritage, right?
I mean, maybe,
I'm a.
maybe.
I don't beat my wife, man. I'm not one of those. Okay, I'm
No,
not
no, no,
macho,
no,
dude.
no,
Right?
no. Of course.
But yeah, right. There's this mixture anymore. Like you said, it's just like it's not
Well,
like it
to
used to
go
be.
back to what you were saying about the
Uh,
trap, when women entered the workforce, what ended up happening is that society, especially commercial society, moved in the direction where we can start charging two income prices for households and the like.
yep.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So with that happening, now we live in a society where if you don't have a two-income household, it's going to be very hard to live unless one of the partners, with the husband, the wife, or both husbands, or one husband, whatever it might be, is working, needs to make a very substantial income.
Right.
And as soon as inflation goes up, it's not like someone can pick up a small job here and there, but rather it puts a real strain on the family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And then
Johnny,
I'm
yeah,
gonna I'm gonna hold
I'm gonna
off. Okay,
invite
let
you
other
to
people
come
talk.
up to
Oh,
be a speaker
okay.
if you're
Yes. Yeah.
interested.
Yes,
And
I am. Thank you.
if you have a question to someone else that comes up, or anybody wants to come and ask Johnny something, definitely jump in. Let's bring Bloody in here. So
How's everyone
before
doing?
we
Hey,
run in,
Dandan, Johnny,
how you doing,
Hello,
Benson?
everyone
buddy.
Hold
here.
on one second. So Benson said, "Is there anything objectively wrong with one person earning more money than another in this conversation?" And absolutely, there's nothing wrong with that. That is completely fair. That's completely fine. I don't think there's anything objectively, morally, or even subjectively that we can justify.
There, money
Yep.
wise, there might not be nothing wrong, but how educated women that don't fall under the traditional line like before, if their husbands is making less than them, I've heard of a lot of husbands saying, I'm not married, guys, so I can't say from experience, but from what I've heard from friends and men that are married, both at work and at church, a lot of those men are walking always at the mercy of those women that make more money. Now, does that mean all men across the board? No, there's
What do
some
you
men
mean?
that
What do you
make
mean
less
by
than
the
the.
mercy of those women?
Well, even though the traditional roles will always remain the same, men will be men, women will be women. The woman that has a higher degree, from university and has a more paying job tends to kind of snap the whip on the man at home. So a lot of those married men. Why do you think there's a lot of divorces, Dan?
I
I'll give you an
think
example.
one second, one
Hold on.
second.
Go
If I'm
ahead.
gonna ask a question, do you mind if I answer it?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when it comes to divorce, I think there's a plethora of things to consider. One of them is the ability of people to survive outside of a marriage as adults, right? So economically, divorce is feasible. Two, um, we've had we have legal precedent around divorce. It has been so litigated, and there is so much history about it that today there is even a market for it. Right? We have divorce lawyers and divorce courts and family courts. So there's so much things around it which make it accessible and possible where it wasn't before. So with that in mind, it could be that these flipping and blending of and the breaking down of the traditional gender role stereotypes or even the way society deals with gender roles, that might be a part of it. So there are so many reasons to divorce that I think to kind of encompass this topic as that which the weight of why divorces are happening is problematic, rather than just recognizing there are many reasons and it's interesting to explore this as a possible reason.
Yeah, I mean, the late Kevin Samuels, I used to listen to him a lot on his podcast. As controversial as he was, one thing he did nail down as he used to talk to his audience was that a lot of these very well educated women, some better off than others, that's one of the reasons why a lot of men are not marrying them because they come in with this very feminist attitude into what they want a traditional man to be as a husband and an expectation. And they want to come into some of these marriages thinking that the man's going to give in to those demands. That's why a lot of these women are by themselves. And we're talking about successful, very beautiful women, but nobody wants them because they come in with a very, very extremely masculine attitude, snapping the whip at men, trying to control them. So when a man sees that early in the relationship, they're like, what the fuck? I mean, I don't need this
But
shit. They
for
walk
me,
away.
right, this is wouldn't you say that this is the cause of these same corrosive gender roles that we
Yes,
experienced
yes,
in the
yes,
50s?
yes,
It is
yes.
specifically the cause of them because we haven't taken the time, both as individuals and in society, to reevaluate these roles. That to be a man, to be masculine, doesn't mean that you have to control the household. And in the reverse, to be the leader of this household doesn't mean you need to be aggressive, independent, dominant, active, right? Not easily to hurt emotionally. Like these aren't necessary to be masculine to run a household. They're not necessary traits.
John, let me jump in. But you know what? I agree with what you're saying, but you have to understand our society has damaged the family. The women getting educated, going to work. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a good thing. But a woman has come out of their place. Traditionally, that's why even the numbers are plummeting when it comes to childbearing and all that. An example would be right now the famous, what's going to be overturned pretty soon, Roe versus Wade. I don't want to go too much in that, but that's an example of where we're getting a backlash. Also, if and I know you've noticed this in time, those roles that women tried to incorporate jobs that only belong to men, whether they could fulfill them or not is another thing. But this competition thing, they got to be equal. Like a woman has to go out there and they want to remain single and they want to be philandered like men. And later on, they get knocked up, get
Wait,
pregnant.
say that again. They wanted to be philandered. What is that word
Philandering,
mean?
philandering.
Okay.
Jumping bed to bed. Being sexually fast, a fast lifestyle. Um, and they want to compete with men and try to prove men that they could do it too, only to end up getting hurt or end up getting pregnant and later on having to abort children
I
and
mean,
stuff.
they might
That
want to do it, right? It might not be
that no, no,
necessarily
no, that is
efficient.
for sure that some are able to get away with it. The most attractive women do get away with it. The least attractive women doesn't easily get away with it. But the most attractive women, that usually in demand, the most attractive women, by what most guys like, and it's a far range, whether you like them short, small, big, tall, chunky, or whatever, BBW, all that stuff, whatever your poison is. you, I'm sorry, I don't want to be condescending, but I'm a man. I like to speak, my mind. So what's the thing? Now in school we have these professional teachers, right? They come in and teach our children. They're basically emasculating a lot of these feminists. There's already even books on this, Dan. Books written where they're telling the teacher, "Don't emasculate young boys. Let boys be boys." So I'm trying to make them soft. No wonder that this explains too why we have the transgender problem now, and then we also have the gay problem. You've been confusing the sexes, you
I
know.
think I have to stop you. I think that you start talking and you're saying facts, and then you start taking these facts to an extreme. The teachers are said, let boys be boys. What does that mean? Let boys be boys. Should a boy be a boy because he doesn't? Should we let boys fight in the playground? Is that letting boys be boys? And is that somehow by letting boys be boys, by not letting boys be boys, we're somehow seeing homosexuality reap up inside. These things are
What I'm trying to
these
change
things
is
are
that
so
it's
independent. These things are so independent of each other
no, no, not
that.
necessarily, not necessarily. We even
But
have already people.
you have to first show you have to first
Okay.
show that there is a link between
Okay, I'm gonna go to
boys
the state of
being.
Florida. I'm gonna go to the state of Florida. If you let me just chime in a little bit. We have the Ron DeSantis who just signed the bill, the parental right of parents in education. Why did they call it the "Don't Say Gay" bill? What they didn't, what the Floridians didn't want through the government and through the parents is stop indoctrinating your children with pornography at a very young age. That's really what it
Well,
is.
no one. First of
Sexualizing
all,
them.
that no one has been indoctrinating kids with
Oh,
pornography.
that's been
But
going on here in
let me ask you
California.
this.
It's been going
Let
on
me
for the
ask you
longest.
this. Let me
Uh,
ask you this. If I'm a teacher in class, right, and I happen to be a gay teacher, and I bring up my husband and I'm a guy, would that be indoctrinating the kids? Would that be
and in
okay or
part it
not
would,
okay?
in part it would, because that's what
Okay,
one of the
so
things they could go
would it
either.
be okay? Would it be okay for me?
Go ahead.
I think we lost him for a second there, Bloody.
Okay.
Uh,
Oh,
but
okay. Well, I guess what he was also trying to say when he said about the gay, also trying to probably go into the heterosexual couples. It is wrong for a teacher to be sharing their life. Period. If it go too much into their life, I would say stop sharing about your life. My kid doesn't not need to know the intricacy, the intimate areas of your life.
uh
You're there to teach my
Okay.
children
Now,
math, science, English.
what if
hang on, Bloody.
I
Hang
was
on,
a
Bloody.
heterosexual woman? What if I
Hang on,
was a
Bloody.
The same
Dan,
would apply. The same
I
would
shouldn't
apply.
bring
I
I
mean,
shouldn't bring up my wife. I
the
shouldn't bring up
teacher
my
should
wife
be
or my
there
husband.
to just to do a job, and that is to teach your children, not to be opening disclosing their personal life to the children. That's none of
okay,
their
hang on,
business.
Bloody. Hang on, Bloody. Dan's got a point. Go ahead, Dan.
By the way, I'm sorry I kind of went on you guys for a second. There was a weird power outage real quick, so I'm back on my phone. But I'll switch back
Okay.
to my main computer with a better mic. Um, but teachers, for you to reduce teachers to these automatons, why even have teachers to begin with? Why not just put kids in front of a robot, in front of a screen, who doesn't share anything about their life? In order to be a good educator, in order to actually teach, you have to also connect. You have to empathize with the kids and the children. The children have to empathize back with you. You actually build a quite a mentor relationship. And to discount that as anything important is just ignorant of the fact that
No,
a
not at all. I
teacher.
mean, what business does a child have to do learning about your sexual lifestyle? That's what the
Hang on.
dispute at the heart of this bill. That's why it was controversial. And in grades kindergarten through the third grade, what are they doing indoctrinating children? You leave
Teaching
Bloody,
that
indoctrination.
till they get to the
bloody.
sixth
So one
grade.
second, slow down,
Hey
slow down.
guys,
No one's
bloody,
indoctrinating a kid. Teaching
No,
children.
no. But why do you
blo-
think the whole bill was here? They were already beginning to do it, and they started defying the law too. So there's going
bloody,
to be ramifications for those teachers. Why?
bloody,
Because there's an agenda
Second, Bloody,
bloody,
Johnny,
to distort children's lives.
Bloody,
It's already
Bloody,
evident.
blo-
Bloody,
Go ahead.
Bloody.
bloody. Hang on, bloody. Hey
You have
guys,
to hang
hang
on,
on,
guys.
hang on,
Slow down.
bloody, bloody. Look, look. You guys have been back and forth a couple of times. You want to give Dan a chance to talk because he's been waiting for a little bit, and I got something to say about your point, bloody. But I was thinking maybe if Dan or I guess Brad, or
Handle it.
Dan is next, and give him a chance, and maybe he might. Is that okay with you, Dan? Dan?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I think I'm just getting back on my
Okay.
main computer. 1 second.
Yeah. Because I do want to address what you're talking about because I kind of disagree. I'm with Dan on this body, but I thought that maybe Dan, could
You
give
guys
his
hear
two
me?
cents, and then yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
Okay, I'm on my main computer right now. It happens again.
You got some good points, buddy, but I really okay. Buddy, I'm going to address your point, okay? Until Dan gets back on, then he's going to put Dan on, and then I'll be quiet. So, buddy, indoctrination. That's a tough one to me because the teachers should be free to teach whatever they want to teach, and it is really the responsibility of the homeowner, the mother and the father, to teach values to the kid. That's my perspective. So in
Yeah,
other
can I
words,
chime in? Can I
it,
chime in real quick?
yes sir,
I
yes sir, go ahead.
respect what you're saying, that they're supposed to teach. They don't
Right.
supposed to teach whatever they feel like, including morality that supersedes what your parents are teaching. That's
Hello?
Okay,
that's
wait.
what's at the
uh, uh,
go ahead.
okay, well,
Go
hang
ahead.
on, you on, Dan? Dan, you on? No, he's still not on. Okay, let me when you say they're superseding, when you say, bloody, that they're superseding what you're teaching
Can you
them at
hear me
home.
now?
we- yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
So
Okay.
uh
1 second. I'm just gonna go on my phone. Give me a second.
okay, so when you say they're superseding what you're speaking teaching at home, Dan, bloody, are you saying therefore that children don't listen to nobody in the world because they're going to try to teach you something? Are you trying to shield the children from all perspectives?
No, but you should know better because you're a Calvinist, right? You're a Christian. You're going
Yeah,
to teach your children as a Christian morality. And you
right.
know that what the public school system is going to teach in regards to morality, sexuality, contrary to your values. So there is going to be a clash,
Yeah,
right?
my point, bloody, is this: there's going to be a clash in everything, and you can't
Exactly.
avoid that. You can't avoid that. The best you
No,
can do,
but you have to teach your children to know when they confront that to be able to think what is right and what is wrong.
but
And
okay, that's true.
since you're
That's true,
Christian and
bloody.
I'm Christian, go ahead.
But that's true, bloody. But you teach your children. You don't go to the school and tell the teacher, "Be quiet. You can't teach this," because now now what you're saying is that you're saying that they have no right to say what they want to say and talk to
Correct.
your children.
I might not be able to do it, but according to the state of Florida, the bill is pretty clear. You cannot do that.
Yeah. So let's not appeal to laws when it comes to moral stuff, because I think when you talk about the morality of teaching about same-sex relationships, there is actually, it's so corrosive to hide that from children, because as we look at the statistics, 1 in 10 children is going to experience some type of non-normal in the distribution sexuality. They might be gay, they might be bisexual, they might kind of be gay, but not really. So to teach a kid that that's possible, that's okay, that this can happen to you, this is important to teach kids. One of the things that shocked me moving to the States as a young kid is when I came in the 4th grade and kids didn't know how sex happens. They didn't know what sexual intercourse was. They weren't. Some of them thought that a boner meant a bone grew in your penis. These are ridiculous things that aren't taught to kids in kindergarten. I grew up in kindergarten learning about my sexual body parts, learning about what sex was, knowing that there were other sexual orientations. That wasn't foreign to me. But in the United States, we seem to live in a society where we think that by teaching kids about sex and teaching kids about gender, we're somehow grooming them or we're somehow making them gay. That is just not the case. And there's
Well,
the evidence that
that's
show
the whole
that.
point of the bill, and other states are probably taking the same measures, if I'm right. But the whole thing is, what
How
are
is
you
that the
doing learning
point of the
about
bill,
sex
Johnny?
at 8 years of age? Honestly, when you haven't even sexually
So
developed.
1 second. So it is 100% true that children begin to experience sexuality and sexual feelings at around age 3. This is fact. This is
No,
psychological.
no, no, no. Hold
No,
on.
this is
There's
one. This is
different
this
schools of thought on that. Very
One
clear.
second, slow down, slow down. It is psychological fact that children by the age of 3 begin to experience sexual feelings. Right? For example, young girls as young as like 4 and 5 want to play horsey because they want to rub themselves, and young kids will touch their balls and penis because it feels good. This is very normal. And when you don't teach kids what appropriate touch is and inappropriate touch, what sex is and not sex is,
Yeah, but that's not
they're
at the
more
base of the
likely
education.
they're
That's the
more
problem.
that is at the base of the
No,
education.
it's not. No, it's not. When they have books that are telling little Johnny that it's okay that Joey and John are kissing and all that, and they're showing it
It is
pornographic
okay.
cartoon. No, it's not. Not
What
pornographic
pornographic
cartoons,
cartoon?
my boy. I'm
What
sorry.
wait, so 1 second. So
Okay,
let's not confuse
there
anything.
was a
Stop,
school board not long
slow down,
ago.
stop,
Okay,
stop,
there was a
slow
school board.
down,
Okay,
We should
stop,
let Dan in. We should
stop.
let Dan in. Dan.
okay.
Yeah, I'm
Go
gonna
ahead.
bring Brett. I'm gonna bring Brett in that. Yeah, but so right after this, we'll bring him in. Bloody, I'll throw you into the speakers, but try to just be aware of other people speaking. But it is entirely true that it's okay for Johnny when they get older to kiss if they want. It is 100% okay. It is also okay when young kids, wrestlers would play games called positions because they would rub their genitals against. These are normal things young kids in elementary school and middle school do. This is just facts. It is okay to do that.
Okay, this is where we're gonna clash on that, honestly, because now you're using your morality against mine. You say it's
No,
okay,
I'm
I
not
say
using
it's not
morality.
okay. Yes, it is, because you're determining what's okay and what's not okay, according to some psychologists. So that means this is
Some
always going to
psychologists.
be a splitting topic. It comes down to morals. You try to teach my children at the 4th grade, we're going to be enemies. There's got to be a proper age to teach your children. That's why we have over
So
sexualized
so
kids
so
doing things
so
that they shouldn't be
how do
doing.
you think one would determine when it's appropriate or inappropriate? Do you trust
Okay,
scientific
okay. I
methodology,
got sex
or
ed
do you trust
classes
or do you trust the church?
just before puberty in the 6th grade. When I hit puberty at
And
7, I
how
already
did you
knew all that
determine that?
stuff.
How did you determine that?
I guess you use proper psychology, not biased psychology. That where it is the right tipping point, right before the women hit menarche, their version of puberty, and men hit puberty.
Well,
You
what
teach them.
about the evidence? What about the evidence that children begin to experience sexuality and sexual feelings before puberty? What about that
Okay,
reality? That is
then we
true.
look at the variety of schools of thought on that, and we base it. We go from there. Not every kid is sexualized. I mean, there's people that are not sexualized immediately, even long after puberty.
No,
You know,
no, sexual having sex. 1 second, having sex doesn't or masturbating doesn't just mean not experience sexuality. We can
I'll
all
be honest.
recall
They're gonna
having a
discover all
crush.
those things on their own. You just got to teach them, of course, about contraception and protection and venereal disease or STDs and all that. Of course, you want to teach
That's
them all
not what
those
we're
stuff
talking about.
because
That's
they're
not what
gonna
we're
do
talking
it. It's
about.
not
One
like
second,
you need a special class to be telling them to do it. The thing is, the
Well,
school has become. Hold on. Go ahead.
okay. So let's just real quick, and then I'll bring other people into the queue. This is going to be the last thing, and then you can respond to me, but try to keep it short, and we'll move on. We're not talking about teaching kids trigonometry in kindergarten and 1st grade, right? We teach kids basic shapes. We're not talking about teaching kids sex, condoms, STDs, hypersexual. We're talking about teaching kids the very basic stuff. And that basic things are, for example, people have different sexualities. You can be a boyfriend and girlfriend. You can be a boyfriend and boyfriend. You can be a girlfriend and girlfriend. Some people might grow up and then feel like they don't feel like a man. And there's ways, like, these are important things to teach kids, because they start tackling this stuff between the ages of like 7, 8, 9, 10. This is when these feelings start showing up, pre-puberty, and it's important to expose them to that. I want to give you the last word. Keep it short,
Okay.
maybe 30 seconds or so, and then I'll bring you into the speakers.
Okay. I would agree to a certain type of sex ed at a proper age. The only problem that was being disputed is the pornography shown at a very young age, and this is already on the web. And there was a school board that got entirely fired, where the mayor told them, "You could either resign today, or all of you will be charged for pedophilia." When it's that severe, because there's something wrong in our school board. When the mayor has to go that far, that he has to threaten them, either you go to jail or you resign today. I leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Bloody. Thank you so much. Let's bring Brett in here. He's a teacher, so that'd be very interesting to hear what he has to say. Hey, Brett, how you doing?
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound fantastic.
Thanks. Man, I hope I can think straight, because we just had AP testing this week and it's been pretty brutal. So the first thing I'll say is
What
that
AP class do you teach? Sorry, my bad.
I teach government, so
Government. Okay, AP government. Okay.
yeah, so it's a interesting topic these days. I would agree that we have to consider what is being taught at different age levels and what in school. But at the same time, I 100% do not agree with most of what the bill said in Florida. And the main reason why is because if you want to live in a democratic society that has liberty and justice for all, then when you have a child that's in class who by de facto, has two mothers that are married, or two fathers, that child deserves as equal and free of a liberated space as does the Christian sitting next to them, or the Muslim, or the atheist, or the Jew. I don't agree with your guys' assessment on teachers sharing lives with students. I've been in teaching over 10 years. It is impossible to not engage students in conversations where you only talk about 2 + 2 = 4 all day long. Can you guys still hear me? It says my internet's kind of bad.
Oh, I hear you loud and
we
clear.
hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right, I'm gonna try to also be aware of my time here. It's an impossibility, guys. You're gonna have conversations that come up. I agree with you that you should not have a teacher that's talking about sexually explicit stuff that they have engaged in necessarily. But at the same time, kids are going to ask about your personal lives, and a gay individual who is teaching in a public school should not have to fear for mentioning the fact that they are married to their husband. They obviously, just as the heterosexual couple as well, should not go into detail about whatever else it might be. But if Larry says, "My husband John and I went to the mountains this weekend and it was beautiful," and then ends the conversation, that's not there. If you're
Or
not
even incorporates that into the education.
yeah, if you're not a fan of that, then I'm not trying to sound aggressive, but you should go to private school, because private schools will make extremely rigid notes to say what teachers are and are not allowed to talk about, which is totally fine. But in the public school setting, put it aside even with the teaching and the staff, the child who has two dads, for example, as one of my nephew's good friends does, that child deserves equal education and not feeling the intimidation that many human societies still today put towards gay people. That's not a democratic. That's not liberty and justice for all for everybody under the 14th Amendment. I'll stop there though, because I don't want to go too long. The second point is, I wanted to note something growing up myself. I played
Can you hear me?
lacrosse. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, just
I can
making
hear
sure
you.
I can be heard. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah, we keep going, Johnny. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just asking Brett if it was a peer pressure there with the lacrosse team and you going into theater. I mean,
No.
that's
Yeah. No. I quit lacrosse because I knew I wasn't going to make the team the next year because my skill level was not where it needed to be.
okay.
And I wanted to try theater because I had done it a lot in my life. My mother was a musician in college and an amazing piano player, and she, I had been in plays when I was younger. And I was commenting on the fact that when you take that to societal norms, some of which may be around for some reasons, others that are just completely just you know made for what reason I don't know. It was just an interesting experience that my friend groups, between those 2 years, just kind of shifted because if someone was a star athlete, they may not want to be associated with the theater crew.
Of course. So,
Um,
did you earlier say something along the lines of cooks? Did that come through your mouth? Male
yeah,
cooks? Okay. So
yeah,
Ah, probably.
that is very interesting because a recent book that I was reading in preparation for today is written by Isabel Heinemann, who it goes inventing the modern American family. And one of the interesting things that she talks about is the way cooking was seen in America as is seen in France. French cuisine or French culinary culture, well, not cuisine, culinary culture, we see that a chef is a man. A man knows how to be a chef, right? Cooking is done best by a man. Where in America, for a longer time, it was women do the cooking, right? Women are better at cooking. That's not a man's thing to do. These are two different opposing gender roles that today are getting crossed over much more than they used to in the past.
yeah, and I think that we need to, if we're trying to, you know, I know we've said this before, but I don't want to say just like raise consciousness. But if we're really trying to create human society that actually tries to make it so all people flourish, I think, in the classroom, this is why I'm very like, when someone says they want to do a different job or a career, when I talk to my seniors, I don't, I don't, I don't give them judgment as to what they should or should not do. I give them out facts. I'll be like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, starting salary when you're 22 out of college as an engineer, blah, blah, blah. Look at different statistics there so you can see, like, if you're trying to buy a home, if you'd like to have a family, what city you live in, what state you live in, etc. But I would never. I understand a few speakers talked earlier, and people are sometimes concerned about what sex or gender does this job or that job. But other than the jobs that require a physical element of firefighter or whatever else it might be, to where it could put people at physical safety, I don't see how it's my place in society to say to like a young woman, yeah, most women are not in business. You probably shouldn't do that. Like, I have a real hard time when I hear adult parents, even of students, sometimes being like, oh, they're going to be this job or that job. Well, let the individual decide. Give them the facts of how much an actor makes, out of college or acting school. Give them the facts of what an engineer or a doctor or whoever else makes, and then let them make the decision as to what career they're going to try to go into. Like, let them make that
So,
decision
can
for
I have a
themselves.
question? So you deal with a lot of seniors, right?
Yeah, I only really teach seniors. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a great age to teach. I
I'm
I so
I'm sorry about that myself.
so I wanted to ask, how much do you think do you hear in class, especially today's? Do you still? Because I know a lot of people who have been outside of school for a bit, right? I've been
Mm,
outside of. I graduated what 2011. It's been almost exact 11 years since I finished high school.
yeah.
I remember being in high school, and I remember this machismo, toxic masculinity being literally in the classroom, right? Oh, what are you, gay? What are you, a fag? What are you, a bitch? What are you, a woman? Like, this is what I would hear as a guy, right? I would be in the orchestra. I also played football and I did martial arts. And I used to love sketching, and I really got into like sketching clothing. And people were like, what are you, gay? What are you, a woman, right? Do you still hear this language parroted in class, or expectations that kids have of other kids or young adults do?
So
Or
I
is it
look.
much more
Uh,
different now than it was maybe when you and I were in high school?
so I work. Yeah, and when I was in high school, I graduated 03, so I'm 37.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I saw that in class all the time, and teachers barely settle, barely blinked. No, at the school I'm at, it's a much smaller school. We have a tighter knit community, and people are not. Yeah, like, I literally can. I have permission to stop class and have a couple kids go on with the lesson, and bring that person outside, and kind of, we work on the relationship aspect versus the authoritative of just punishment. Like, we do have punishments at school, but our philosophy is more like build the relationships, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So no, it's not accepted as much in our school. I can't say for larger general public schools, though. I think it's gotten better, but I think part of the issue is that it has to be very clear at any school that you're at, and really in society too, of like, what are the ramifications of like people just being overtly aggressive about whatever it might be, whether it's racial language, homophobic language, degrading someone because of their religion. People sometimes try to make the argument that it's like you can say whatever you want, and it's like, yeah, but you know what? Like, what we allow in society to a certain degree that we don't speak up against, like, certain norms are set up to where you have ideas that just keep spreading. And while we might have gotten better with violence in society overall over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years, there's certain social norms you know that really do not belong. They're just created because, like you said, Dan, of this machismo, of this ridiculous notion, like, oh, like, I don't know, pick the topic you're thinking about. um
Uh,
Sorry, a
can
little
can
tangent
I
there.
chime in a little bit, Brett and Jeff? Uh, I'll be honest. I think, and I speak from personal experience because I grew up where I graduated in 1990. So I'm a much older crowd. I'm 49 years old. I know I sound much younger too. I've been told, but the whole thing is, I think, at least in the urban area, I got to see this a lot in school. And I know the school has done everything in their power, at least here in the Los Angeles school, area, LA Unified School District. They've done everything in their power to promote a safe environment of more accepting. It's not going to come around. I'll tell you that easy. It has and it hasn't, without contradiction. I'll tell you why. Because when you have a set of rules for as a new norm for the culture that's here, that's one thing. But with coming immigrants of variety of background, that tends to change. And I've seen that. And it's not to be evil, but you have to correct the newer generations that are up and coming. but a lot of times they still come in with a lot of that machismo. I speak machismo because you brought it up, Brett, and I seen it personally in my culture as a Mexican. We have a very strong machismo, probably one of the strongest in all of the Latin American world, probably the world over, next to Muslims and Middle Easterns.
I,
So
I
that
would
is
agree with that,
present
Patrick.
there.
I would agree with that.
That is there. I got brought up with a certain type of machismo, despite that my father wasn't around because I lost him at the age of 6, so I grew up fatherless. But I had the cultural standard and norm to meet up to at that age. And yeah, I am of my upbringing, of my culture, both Mexican because I am ethnically Mexican, and as an American because I was born and raised here all my life. So I speak from that experience. So yeah, it wasn't easy coming around and being sensitive to people's needs. Or I mean, for crying out loud, I got to work at Starbucks for 6 years, and five out of those years, I worked with mostly homosexuals, the people, the gay lifestyle, right around the time where Prop 8 was around here in California about gay marriage. And those issues were coming up very strong. And I'll be honest, guys, I'm not Catholic, but I have very strong Christian convictions. So that's been one of the things I've even looked into because I got the morality I grew up with, conviction, and they're set, and it's almost hard to get away. And I'm not that I'm refusing to, but it's not that I'm not accepting of people. I am accepting of people, not necessarily approving of people. That's been the case. So I admit there is that machismo. I'm partially responsible, but I'll be honest. I never went around bashing anyone. All my joking around was always among my own friends, guy friends that were mostly heterosexual, and any joking around. And but I'll be honest, the last job I had because I worked at NBC Universal as a contractor, I noticed the environment. The younger generations too. They some of them, not all of them, mostly kind of like the Generation Z. They've already kind of caught on to be more open, to be more accepting, to be more. Whereas I noticed some of the millennials, kind of like the age group of you guys, right? 37, 29, around there. They're like whatever. Some of them are, some of them are not up to date, and
I
some of
Buddy,
them
want
don't
I want to
care.
ask you something, Vlad. I want to ask you something. How does, because you talked about the quote unquote the gay lifestyle, which I find I really oxymoronic term, but when you say what I want to talk about isn't necessarily sexuality, right? Because
Okay.
and I feel like
Yeah.
you're making this connection where it doesn't need to be made. Many people who are homosexual. Do you mind muting yourself while you're not speaking, Vladdy?
Go ahead.
It's because of the background noise. Yeah. So, but you're open to unmute and respond. One of the things that a person could be homosexual, gay, quote unquote, and still be masculine. But even within men, we even say we have alpha males, beta males. We have masculine, more feminine men. But then even within the gay community, you have tops and bottoms, and they do, within themselves their gender, not just their sexual attraction. These two things are very different. You can be gay and be very masculine and like have these stereotypical masculine characteristics, and you don't necessarily need to be feminine. Does that make sense, Vladdy? And I think that you keep conflating
No,
these two things.
believe it or not, I mean that's why I had 5 years to work and get to know people. I came, like I said, and I admit, if I'm at fault for, please, God forgive me and humanity. I did come from the culture where it was violently, belligerently anti-gay. I'll be honest. Being Mexican,
Yeah.
you're still anti-gay even in Mexico. I'll be honest.
But what
There,
about the gender? What about the gender? Not just being gay. Did being gay consider not being man? Is that what you're saying?
yes, that's one of the things in as a Hispanic. The more machista you are in the culture, the more you tend to be, and you look at anything. The moment you hear gay, or in Spanish you hear the word maricon or joto, the moment the person gets identified, they immediately, oh, this guy's a sissy, this guy's a softie, watch him, or he's going to be looking at your ass, or he just wants to get with you, watch him. So there was immediately like a alarm in the group that went up. So immediately,
Hmm.
when you see the person among your friends, you kind of you fuck around with them, you
And
mess with them.
what was the attitude around lesbians?
You see, lesbians always get a kind of like a get out of jail free card because a lot of the guys, like, you have to understand, Dan, that many of the lesbians weren't straight out. They hadn't come out, so they were still very feminine. and perhaps struggling, perhaps going from boyfriend to
Well,
girlfriend.
most homosexual men are in the same way. I would actually posit that this big societal disgust towards homosexuality, rather man to man homosexuality rather than female to female, is because that most of these gender roles were constructed and created by men, whether it's a positive or negative thing, but this is just the reality of the situation. And this goes in line with the book I told you I was reading about earlier, which was, I forgot. I think it's the Inventing of the American Family, but I forgot what her name was. Let me pull it up again. Everything closed down when the power went out. But
Can I chime in real quick?
yeah, of course.
Okay. I would say that there is nothing inherently wrong with the idea of masculine or machismo as an idea when if a group of friends engage in that because a group of I boxed my friends in high school to see who was the toughest boxer. Like boxing was really big
Same.
in my high school, like amateur, not really good boxing, but like on this, just for fun. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, you know, I think that what is hopefully happening with human consciousness overall is we're trying to move to a place where we see other humans as more human. And the inadvertent behavior of extreme machoism is like sometimes a lack of for a better phrase giving a shit about other people and how those actions can affect others. And so what I
Mm-hmm.
when I face this in my school, or just if I've talked to students before, because I've taught, like I said, for over a decade, is if we want to, Vladi, if you want to talk about religion, I bring it back to the golden rule, and I don't flinch on the message, the very simple message behind that concept. And most major religions around the world try to follow that, something like that concept. And so machismo, like I said, is fine, believing in yourself and having confidence and, going out to play sports and, like, all these other
Well, in the
things are
sense,
totally
masculine.
great.
Right. I think what you're saying, Brett, is that masculinity is okay and should be celebrated, and I agree with you, as well as femininity. But there are certain aspects of it
Yes.
that are
Yeah.
toxic or corrosive, and those are the
Yeah.
ones we want to live.
And can
Yeah.
I chime in? And I
Well, just
understand. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
let me just finish one idea
Yeah,
here. It's
I
the
want to give real quick. I want to give Brett the last word, and then I was gonna bring in Peter, not Peter. Where'd he go? Oh no, but I'll bring in Amy
Amy,
afterwards.
yeah.
So Brett,
So
you take your last word, and then you come into the speakers.
yeah, all I was gonna say is that we have to examine the where that line is, where it's messing around with friends, it's joking around, it's whatever else. But then there's also behaviors that we can see that can be potentially psychologically damaging. There's, as an example, you know, hitting children as a form of discipline used to be acceptable. And now we are realizing through many years of psychological evaluation that that is not, it's not a good thing. And it creates trauma. And so in the same way, like we said before, the kid who's in third or fourth grade and reveals that he has two dads, if some of the other kids in that grade level have parents who say, "Oh, it's okay. They're not supposed to be doing that. They're sinning or whatever," then the potential, violence that can happen there, we don't think it'll happen, but, you know, violence can happen at a very young age. That's not really where I wanted to end, but I
That's
was
okay,
trying to
but
I was trying to
I'll
close.
add to that that it doesn't just cause independent trauma to the individual. It also does what's called generational trauma, because when a child is taught that a form of communication is with your hands, right, the child models that behavior and therefore is more likely to hit not only their classmates but their future children, perpetuating this culture and this idea that an appropriate form of communication is by throwing hands around. But Brett, If you want to, you can jump into the speakers, and we'll bring Amy on. Hey, Amy.
Hey, I just wanted to chime in with my usual take that a lot of what you guys have been talking about, whether it was with the expectations of being a man in society versus, how you feel as a child and being bullied as a child. And I think there's a more a solution that isn't necessarily easy to implement, but it seems like it would cover all of those bases. And that is to teach first yourself, because most of us weren't taught how to do this or it wasn't modeled for us. But this is what we can start teaching our children and others is how to handle being bullied, how to handle the expectations that society or your wife places on you for what they believe a man is supposed to be. And if you're living in a society and you're graduating from school and you have an expectation that you feel is placed upon you to be able to afford a house for your family, well, if you take that on, you have to realize that you're taking that on and you're putting that pressure on yourself, and then you're going to blame society, you're going to blame your wife, but really you're consenting to it when you take it on and have anxiety about it. And so the solution would be, like just acceptance and acknowledgement of who you are and where you are and being okay with it. Or if you're gay and you're in a school and you're in like a religious school that isn't as open to it, you can either just kind of see where you're at and maybe not try to flaunt it because you
You
might
think
get
people
beat up,
should be okay
or you
with the
just
fact
be
that
okay with it and you don't allow other people to shame and criticize you, where you're just like, okay, well, sure, you can call me a sissy, or yes, I like to do theater, and if you're okay with it, then no one else can really have much of an impact on you. And that's easier said than done, but
I
I
think
think
it
that
might be a little impossible too, Amy, right? In the sense of like you're a young
it's
kid to kind of say, "Oh no, just accept it. You get bullied, deal with it internally.
no,
Don't let it affect
that is
you."
not what I'm
So
saying,
so what did
Dandan.
you mean to say? Okay, then
It's not, okay,
I
I'm getting
understand.
bullied, deal with it. It's when it's like I try to teach my kids about the type of kids that will bully you and why they're going to bully you. And isn't it interesting that the 8th grader is picking on the 5th grader, and teaching them that 8th grader picking on the 5th grader and has low self-esteem needs to feel empowered. And if they're calling you a nerd buddy, you could either say, well, I don't think I'm a nerd, because he doesn't think he's a nerd, or he can own it and say, you're right, I'm the biggest nerd at this school
Oh,
and
that's
don't
what you
you
meant.
forget
Okay.
it,
Amy,
motherfucker. Like,
Amy, I got a question if I may chime in here real quick, Amy.
yeah.
That's interesting, your take, right? And I understand you got a really good grasp on that. But here's something different, okay? In today's society, your son, if you have a son, he's going to grow up in a neoliberal world, and I'm interested to see what you're going to tell your son when he says to you, "I'm the man of the house. I'm supposed to provide for my home, and I can't." What do you think about that? How do you handle something like that?
Well, I would
Where the
ask him what makes him think he's supposed to provide and what does that mean to him? And is he doing the best he can and where is he getting these expectations from? Because he can either choose to take on those expectations or he can see that these expectations are for him at this time unattainable. And he can be
so
okay
I
with
think
that.
that's where we might disagree a bit, Amy. I think that many of these expectations are not things that we can simply choose, but are
Yes,
thrust
you
upon us
can.
from a
Can,
societal perspective.
can
Well,
I
what's
jump in,
going to
Not
Dandan?
happen? What
one
is the
second.
consequence? Because you can either consent to those expectations or you cannot. Because
Hey,
expectations are placed on me all the time, and I don't give a fuck. And it
Did you
works.
used to give a fuck?
Yes, yes, I
Amy, I
did.
wish that was so. I'd be like you for crying
Man,
out. I'd be like
I have
you.
done a lot of work. I have been through shit and I've been through hell, and that's what it took for me to learn how to be okay with who I am and do, you know, what I want to do and not do what everyone else wants me to do. And man, it is very liberating. And this is what I try to teach other people, because you are not a victim to society's expectations. You're a victim to your consent to society's expectations. You're putting that pressure upon yourself, and you don't
God
have
bless
to.
you.
You may get, you know, ostracized, and in a way, like, thank God. Like, I don't want to be in your little clique with your other little mommies. Like, I don't want to be part of that. And so
So Amy, in
ostracize
that,
me all you
I
want,
was
because
wondering.
I'm not interested.
God
So
bless you,
I
Amy.
love this whole self-empowerment thing. I'm 100% behind you in that. But I want to ask you can you think back to a time in your life when we were young, how specific gender constructs and gender role assignments played in your idea of yourself, and how they have harmed or have helped you in your growing up through? Can you think back of times when you felt like these things where you noticed these things break down or be problematic or even be good for you?
Well, I mean, I can say that I was a tomboy, and I was like a little, you know, like I self-diagnosed myself as like with Asperger's, and I look back on my childhood, and oh yeah, you know, I was the only girl in the 80s that didn't have hairspray and big hair, because I didn't do my hair. You know what I mean? And I kind of I was the tomboy. And so and that was okay. I mean, I guess there weren't it really wasn't a problem that I had from expectations of others. You know what I mean? I guess I was pretty accepted as I was. I guess there were times where I kind of wished that I fit in a little bit more, but yet I didn't really, I didn't really get some of my peers. And so I didn't necessarily want to be one of them, because I thought they were weird and they thought I was weird maybe, but um I'm not really sure how to answer your question. Like, I can
That's
speak
fun.
more about, like, just I'm a mom, and that was interesting, because I never in a million years thought I would be a stay-at-home mom. But I really kind of
And why do you think
enjoyed.
you became a stay-at-home mom?
Well, my ex was very, like, traditional, and he wanted that. And so a part of me was a little bit resistant, because, like, I was raised in I graduated high school in 1992. And so I've probably mentioned the T-shirt was one of my favorite T-shirts that said, "Anything boys can do, girls can do better," right? So I was
Hmm.
raised with, like, that feminism. It wasn't crazy, and my parents, weren't, like, feminists, but they did kind of teach me I can do anything that I want to do. And so when I went to school and graduated, and I was a physical therapist for a long time, and so I was very independent, And so when I met my now ex-husband, and he wanted me to be a stay-at-home mom, I was like, when he mentioned that before we were even engaged, and he was like, "Well, did you ever want to be a mom?" And I'm like, "Well, I never really thought about that, because I was never, engaged, or, never got that serious with any boyfriend, but, I never really saw myself as that." But I was open to it, because I'm very open-minded. And so but I loved it. And when I did have to go back to work part-time, when he was doing his fellowship, it was really hard for me to send my 1-year-old to daycare, because the kid cried the whole entire time. He was always with me, always. And I really embraced that, and I really loved that. And it was kind of surprising. Like, I remember my own mom, because I was always, pretty independent, and just my same personality. She was surprised how I took to motherhood even. But I think that that's just kind of like, it's just natural. I am female. I am feminine, and it kind of brought out my feminine side. So I've kind of
Interesting.
played different roles, so to speak.
Amy, I gotta say, if if um, if you're put in a position where you couldn't provide for your family for whatever reason, your attitude toward that would be very, very much different from a man's, in the sense that There's something about not working in a man that gives value to himself, and what do you call, help me out here, Dan, what's Dan or Bloody, what's the word I'm looking for, gives him some sort of purpose, some sort of meaning, some
Self-esteem.
sort of huh?
Well, in the things you can measure, in many respects, men feel like they're not supporting, they're not worth anything. They're not men, right? It's kind of
And
what
I
they feel.
think that is a big societal expectation. And
Yeah,
and I can understand that, just being in the environment that I was raised in, I can understand it, and I can empathize with a man struggling with that.
yeah.
And that's hard to just let go of, and like I said, it's easier said
What do
than
you
done
think
to
of
just
women who have issues bearing children? How do you think that plays a role in their expectations of
Right,
themselves
yeah,
as a
that's
woman?
that's
right.
that's
I
that's
actually know
hard.
someone who had to go through a hysterectomy because of cancer, and losing that, she went through a lot of trouble being able to reconcile it. She's a woman. She can't bear children, but I'm no longer what she would say things like I'm a cow for slaughter. I'm not a cow for milk, right? I'm not a cow that can bring
Well,
babies.
yeah,
That kind of
yeah,
took a
yeah.
lot. That gender, that societal expectation of what it means to be a woman was very hard. It's very hard for people who fall outside of those boundaries.
But I think that people like that can, there's a difference between feeling the result of, the inability to have children. There's a very personal aspect to it, and then there's a aspect of, ooh, what does this say about me? What does society think about me now? And those are two different things. And so you can reconcile. It's easier, I would think it's easier to reconcile the societal expectation, because it's like you can't do what you can't do. I mean, you can always adopt a child, but I think there is just a personal, deep, like spiritual almost difficulty with feeling like not good enough, or feeling like something's wrong with me if I can't have children. And you
or
just have to
Well,
work through that.
I think the
or I
important thing
can't
here is
work,
that,
right, or I can't
yeah,
work,
or like I can't
simple as
work.
that.
Yeah, I can't work. I'm not a
Yeah.
man if I can't work. I'm not a woman if I can bear children, or I
But I
don't bear
think we can
children. So,
challenge that. I think each person can
and I think we
individually
should. I agree with
challenge
you.
that expectation. It's like,
And I
does that
think that
really,
we do
am I
see
not?
we do see individuals challenging that, and I think that where we see that happening is, it has become challenged individually so many times that we're starting to see that in social, public, and political discourse.
You mean that you think it started from an individual challenging that, just on an individual basis, and that's become more prevalent?
I think so because I think as society has developed, as technology has changed, as their interactions between both sexes have changed a bunch, right? The age we get married, the amount of sexual partners, we're seeing these things get challenged. And they have been challenged on an individual level so many times that people are resonating when someone speaks openly about these challenges. Go, yeah, 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 I agree. And it's gone so big that it even has hit our political sphere. Of course, it comes from individual challenges and not
And
just some top-down propaganda.
one thing that is really like to go towards, if you will, something as serious as domestic violence in society, for many years it was, if when back in our, parents or grandparents age, where it was much more of men working and women being at home, like on the statistical average, if you will. We also had a challenge in society of, what was acceptable behavior of dealing with pain and dealing with stress in life and many other scenarios. And that aspect of turning the thing in, of not being able to work, or whatever else it is, that's definitely a concern for sure. But hopefully progressing away from just the boys will be boys, or the masculine attitude before, of where like domestic abuse or a smack or something like that was considered like normal. And it obviously hasn't, burned out today, but like that's a portion of gender where, like people talk about, quote unquote, like, all right, well, what was a traditional role, or whatever else it might be. It's not to say throw every single thing out. It is to say critique the things in society that need to actually be critiqued, that don't help humans flourish. I don't know if I was able to connect that there or not for everyone.
I think that
That was
said
good. Can I
eloquently.
jump in?
Yeah,
Brad,
go ahead, Vladi, jump in, and then we're going to bring Bustelo into the conversation.
oh, okay. Brad, what you were saying is true. Those norms, I can speak from experience in my own culture. That was a problem or has been a problem. It's still a problem to a certain extent of the children looking at the violence, especially the males, the young boys, of their parents, the domestic violence, the father hitting the mother. Has been carried on. We'll know in psychology that carries on. And you see it now still
Vladi,
in
we're
some
having a
young
lot of
children.
bleed from your mic. Vladi, we're having a lot of bleed from your mic. We're hearing you and another woman in the background. So if you unmute next time, try to either make sure you're in a quiet area or unfortunately try to withstand from speaking. You can type in the chat. I'll try to repeat your point.
Yeah, I really
So
want to hear. I really want to hear what you have to say, Bloody. It's really hard. Yep.
it's very hard, yeah. So Bustelo, you're in. You can unmute. What do you have to say? Bustelo? You just have to unmute yourself and speak, and then we'll be able to hear you. Well, while you're figuring it out, let me go through the chat a little bit. So one thing that Nevik said that I like goes, that's what the convo is about. Challenging norms, not just through acts, but conversations. And he's right. We do have to rethink many of the place where these gender roles and expectations have, in a way, harmed society. Here's a really interesting one. When it comes to fitness, I know Nevik, I know you're into fitness, so you might like this. This expectation of men having to pump up their upper body, right? That's what it means to be a man. These images we see in magazines of men with very big shoulders and backs and chests, and they don't. But a lot of things that men ignore in fitness, and it's not a part of their gender of what they need to be is, for example, cardio, leg strength, flexibility. These are important things about being healthy that men don't take into account. And women, in many respects, will see them just working up their butt or their legs, and they won't focus on upper body. They won't focus on strength in specific position, but they will focus on flexibility or on glute strength. And these are ways in which these gender expectations are even affecting the way in which we think about our health and our physical training. Do you have anything to say about that, Nivik? Maybe you want to jump in and talk about it, or are you good out there? Oh, Bustelo is back in. Let's see. Let me make him next caller. But I want to hear what Nevik has to say because I
Hello?
know he's into fitness. Yeah, I can hear you, my brother.
Yeah, I just people it's thought to be physical for the guy in things in general, and where people act, it's like they'll act out in a bullying, aggressive, beat you down, way, in where I don't want to talk about it, and I don't want to really talk it down. Like, I don't want to be insulting, but like, that's how an animal acts. It's like you're
I
thinking with
hear
the
you.
animal brain. It's like human beings, they more got by through their brains in adapting to the environment. So to resort to that's like I asked a person a question, like, if you come across a person and another dude and he said this to you, well, you'd beat him up, and it's like, well, what if,
Yeah,
like,
this is where we
what if
the machismo, the
yeah, what if I
aggressive
released the
machismo.
bull into the ring? Would you pick it up and try to body slam it too? You know what I mean? No, I'd use my
I hear
brain.
you. I hear you. And humans should
Why
use
would
your
you use
brain
your
more.
brain for the bull?
No, you should, of course. Well, thanks, Nivek. Let's hear. So we're reaching about, maybe I have another 15 minutes on because Thursday, I got back from work. I come straight to this. So another 15 minutes. I want to hear from Bustelo, and I definitely want to hear from James. So Bustelo, and topics, criticisms, concern, additions, and how has your gender and the expectations of your gender affected you in your growing up or even your adult life? Take it away.
Well, I have a fond affiliation for barren women. women with no eggs, because they were always the ones who were like, "Oh, you're the best effeminate little man I've ever seen." And so they greased me up my whole life. They were basically my patrons. So barren women, I shout out to you. You get it. Like we can live
What,
vicariously through these lovely mother hens, battle axes, etc.
okay, I'm not really following you.
I know. I wasn't. I thought that was the last topic was barren women with the last caller. What was her name? Amy.
Oh, Amy, yeah, we brought up women who some of them don't feel like they're women because they can't bring children.
Yeah, that was the last where I was at. I'm sorry if I got off topic.
That's all right. That's all right. How has gender affected your life in a significant way? Would you say, or the expectations of what it means to be a man or the woman you need to find to be with, or whatever, vice versa?
It didn't get involved with mine. I guess I was old fashioned. It was basically just what Mother Nature gave me, and I just played the hand.
Oh, okay. Okay. Is there anything else you want to add or speak about?
No, I wanted to make sure I was unmuted.
Oh, okay. Well, perfect. So, well, if you have anything to say, you can jump back on, but let me bring James in then.
Thanks.
Okay, no problem. James, you're here. You just unmute yourself and go.
Hey, good evening. I may
Good
not have
evening.
missed this part, but I just want to point out that our standards and our consumer products are nowhere near close to the Europeans. They're like 10, 15, 20 years ahead of us. Phthalates, a lot of other variations of chemicals that affect gender in utero.
Mm-hmm.
Are prevalent in American consumer products and stuff we smear on us, that we spray, we consumer, what do you call it? Cosmetics are not considered consumables, yet we, douse ourselves. And I think a lot of the critical, there's a critical moment in development very early in utero that is when a lot of the variations of gender happen. And while obviously I think naturally you're going to have a stronger lion in the pride, and but we're also at the point where the chemical revolution has been studied and looked at, and the Europeans have like really attacked this and had to protect their citizens. So I think that's something to consider. Just taking it from that standpoint, people don't even know what phthalates are, or
Well,
what's the other
phthalates
stuff.
are actually a big deal. For people who don't know what phthalates are a byproduct. They're similar to BPAs,
Yeah,
and they
it's like an
they kind of leak
estrogen.
off of a plastic that is in a semi-liquid solid state. So we'll find it in things like saran wrap, right? If you guys ever remember how saran wrap used to be really sticky and really good, and then all of a sudden it was no longer really sticky and really good, right? This is because they tried removing phthalates from it. But in things that are considered non-consumable, we find phthalates and even lead in many cases. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, packaging, meat packaging or cheese packaging is considered non-consumable, so it will have phthalates that would leach into the product.
Mm-hmm.
And what phthalates do, your body actually recognizes phthalates as estrogen. So men who consume a lot of phthalates will actually, their body thinks that they're consuming estrogen, which starts becoming very problematic in the hormonal system,
Mm-hmm.
which is
And
why
just
they'll want to
imagine,
develop breasts and
right?
yeah.
And just imagine what's happening when, an embryo is being formed at critical stages, and mom is putting on, lotion or spraying a perfume, or, putting a body something on their body, and it's being consumed. So,
Mm-hmm.
and by no means am I indicating that gender uh, variations in gender is a product of you know being altered, but I mean we are being altered in some shape or form. And I do believe there is a variation in gender in nature, right, in terms of the super
Of
testosterone to
course.
the super estrogen.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think we should consider consumer protections, like when you go in the bathroom and that little sprayer goes, You know, like, do you have any idea what you're breathing in? No one knows. You ever ask about that thing? No one has any idea because of what is it called? Consumer patent, or I forget what it is, but secrecy to your recipe, and
Exactly.
atomizers, or
But
it's just
you're not wrong. Gender definitely, at the beginning of tonight's episode, I started with an analogy around color. And that when we look at color, we definitely have a biological impetus for colors that we see, and also a physical reality that influences the colors that we see. But we can divide these colors up into an infinite spectrum of things, right? So, for example, this was first I first discovered this when I was having a discussion with my brother, and we made the distinction between blue and periwinkle. And I was like, "Well, they're both blue." Well, he goes, "No, there's blue and then there's periwinkle," and he made the distinction between these colors. Um, and then I started thinking about how growing up in Israel, we made a distinction in purple and Bordeaux, where people here, or dark red, whatever it is, they made a different Bordeaux, maroon, and purple. But here in the States, they didn't really make that distinction. And when it comes to, if it is true, which we can assume that it is, that in excessive amounts of phthalates and different hormones are affecting the way that people's secondary sex characteristics are developing, that it will definitely play a role in why we are having this change in conception
yeah,
around gender. That makes
yeah,
complete sense, and if anything, it's here to show us that our
yeah,
archaic ways of thinking about gender are not really in line with human biology. Rather, we're
right,
simply in line with standards and norms, and
yep,
that does hurt those who don't fall underneath the bell curve.
yeah. And then could you I would love to look at, like, say, the Israeli uh, perspective, or the what do you call it, the standards on what they're doing in terms of protecting, and their consumer standards. I would guarantee they
Well,
are
the
different.
consumer standards, I'll tell you, they're already higher up. So when you buy, for example, anything at the store that has like high sugar and high fat, they put a red, scary label on it,
Oh
right?
no,
Like you just
right,
in your face. You
yeah,
can't escape it. Fast food places, drive-throughs are taxed at ridiculous rates. People don't even have them. Um,
right,
all that stuff, because drive-throughs are extremely damaging to people. America is very much a driving culture, and imagine inside this driving culture, you're not only it's promoted, but it's sold to take Quiznos or McDonald's in the
yeah,
drive-through. That is literal poison.
yeah,
Um, and as someone
I
who suffers from food
I
addiction,
had a question for
that was
James.
a horrible thing for me.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Body.
Yeah, James, I was going to ask you, since you brought up the thing about Europe having better quality.
Nice.
I mean, have you been up there for long? I mean, that you experience better quality food and with the Europeans?
No, I think if you just look at, like, if you look at studies, if you look up what they've done to consider cosmetics a consumable, uh, that alone changes, like, the perspective on what can be sold there, what can be sold here. Um, so that's all it is, really.
If I discovered that sunscreen made me more feminine, I'd be in real trouble because I'm pretty pale, and like like I'd be like, well, I guess I'm just gonna be both. That's just how it is.
Right,
Okay,
right.
guys.
But
So
the difference
it looks
is,
like
like,
it is that sad time where we're getting to the end of the show.
yeah,
So I know this is annoying. There's so much more to talk about, but let's bring Nivik, give him the last word, and then I'll just close it away. So let me quickly, before everyone disappears, after my show, 30 minutes later, 7:30 Pacific Standard Time. Masha, our good friend Masha, friend to the Penguin, friend to everyone, is having her show. What is it called again? I have it here written down. Her first show. Where it's in the chat. Where is this? There it is. Diabolical Love Line with Masha premieres tonight. The philosophy of erotic love is on topic. It's going to be 30 minutes after my show, which is 7:30 Pacific Standard Time. So definitely jump on that. Also, join the Penguin group if you're interested in these conversations. They're awesome. They're fun. If you're interested in what I have to say and what I have to think, you can follow me on Twitter at the real Dandan. You can follow Penguin at the Penguin. But let's bring on Neva, give him the last word, and then we'll have to end it for tonight, everyone. So let's bring Nivik in here. You have the last word, brother.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk to Bloody. I wasn't really understanding where he's coming from with
So go ahead, ask him his question, and then we'll end
norms
it there.
and upholding Christian norms. Um, I wasn't really quite getting where he's coming from.
In anything in particular in regards to the Christian norms, Nivik?
No, you mentioned it, so I wanted to know that with you.
Okay. Well, when I'm coming across with the Christian morals in regards to genders, there's biblically based. It's what God has put down, established in His Word. So it is mostly affecting revolves around traditional marriage and in regards to the roles, a man will provide, a man will work, and be the head of the household. So it does not permit whatsoever the liberal or the modern day man in that sense. Why? Because God sees it different, and that's what He gave the Jews, and the Jewish gave to Christians.
Yeah.
So, in regards to leadership, in regards to who's the head of the host, yes, it is patriarchal. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, it's going to go against everything that you see in society now because they've attacked the traditional role, and feminists especially attacking patriarchy. Of course, they're not referring to that patriarchy of home. They're actually referring to their false notion of patriarchy and the 1% elitist rich, yada yada yada.
Well,
I
you,
don't
you,
mean
you you don't
that.
have to you don't have to go in and say false because it's
Yeah,
not.
and
Okay.
but the whole thing is what I'm always alluding to in this is the traditional role of what is expected as a man and a
Yeah.
woman. Does
Does
it
that answer
mean
your
it
question,
cannot
Nivek?
be? Go ahead.
Does that answer your question, Nivek?
Yeah. I understand the tradition, and I understand like with the biblical view. I mean, like normally in with human beings, and the biblical role in where stories are passed down as well in tradition, but things change normally over time. So I don't there's almost no such thing as a norm, because what you see as a norm that would be accepted at one time, it wasn't always the case, because environment changes over time. It's a natural thing in adaptation. So whatever somebody is okay with and saying, well, this should be because this has, because it goes way back. Nothing is indefinite. Something that whatever it is you are for hasn't always existed. And if what was before the thing that you are now for, if somebody wanted what
I hear. So what you're saying,
let me just
Nivek,
finish.
is
Let me
that
just finish. Let me just
okay?
finish real quick. I'm just saying what a person is for now, what a person was, what was before that. If they got their way in not wanting change, then what you are now for would never have existed.
So what you're
I
saying is
would
that
I would
even
go
these
ahead.
traditional ideas that Blatty is speaking about, you're saying were at one point a revolutionary idea, one that threw away norms that came before it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much, and that feeds for progress, because you have to have changes, right, in adaptation and progress. So, like, how do
So yeah,
you
so
guys
I
do
heard
that
you
if you're
clearly.
all about having
So
things always being the same, and
I
things never always been the
so
same?
you
can
guys,
I
I really
chime
do
in?
have to cut. Guys, I really have to end the show, buddy. I'm
Sorry
sorry.
Okay,
I
about
know you
that.
okay,
want to chime in.
all right,
Jump into the Discord, hash it out there. Everyone come in.
All
So
right.
okay.
I'm glad. I think today's episode went great, everyone. And I agree with Nivik that it is important to change the way we think of the world with new evidence and new and by observing and reading the world around us, and not only changing the way we behave according to the world, but change the way we think about it as the world is changing and it is forever going. So thank you everyone for coming in. Let's talk about it.
All right.
And hopefully I'll see you guys all next week. Thank you very much, everyone.